After my husband Peter died, I moved in with my son Jason and his wife Claire. We'd never been especially close, but I thought, family is family. That has to mean something. I helped with the down payment on their Bellevue house, paid for the new kitchen appliances, even hired a designer to make it feel like home. Her home. Claire said she loved the soft grays and natural wood accents. Jason just nodded and handed me a beer. In return, we agreed on a kind of arrangement. I'd help with the kids, keep the house running smoothly, and they'd make sure I wasn't alone. I told myself it was fair. I told myself it was what Peter would have wanted. From the outside it looked peaceful. Shared breakfasts with little Evan in his booster seat, casual evening talks over laundry folding, even the occasional smile from Claire when she wasn't looking at her phone. But there was something about the quiet. Felt stage. Like everything I touched had invisible tape around it, marking the boundary between gratitude and intrusion. One afternoon, as I was unloading groceries, I heard Claire on the phone. She thought I was outside. I stopped, not meaning to eavesdrop, but something in her voice made me still. Yeah, she lives with us. Like a built-in grandma roommate. Until she gets old enough to be annoying. She laughed. Quick, sharp sound. Something inside me turned cold. Not Mom. Not our family. Not even Vanessa. Just a convenience. Placeholder. That night, I ate dinner quietly. Jason chatted about work. Claire scrolled through her phone. Evan mashed sweet potatoes into his plate. Smiled. He nodded. I said nothing. But something had shifted. I started noticing small things. My coffee mug missing from the cupboard. My laundry basket moved from the hall closet to the garage. The seat at the table I usually took now occupied by a stack of mail. It was all subtle, easy to ignore. But when you spend your life making space for others, you learn the language of being pushed out. Claire began leaving early on Saturdays. No explanation. Just a text. Busy today. Back late. Jason started coming home later. Always work stuff. Evan started calling me her, instead of grandma. I gently corrected him, but he shrugged and ran off to play with his toy truck. I began to understand. I was being faded out. Still I kept helping. I woke early to make breakfast. I folded tiny socks. I scrubbed countertops until they shined. I told myself it was just a phase. That grief made people distant. But grief doesn't erase respect. And distance doesn't sound like Claire, whispering into her phone. She's useful now. That's enough. I stood in the kitchen, holding a clean spoon, staring at the spotless tiles. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't home. This was a holding place. And they were already deciding when to let go. Over time, the small things began to sting more. It wasn't just the missing thank yous or the absence of eye contact. It was how they gave me tasks now. Not requests, not suggestions. Just assumed instructions. Evan needs to be picked up at 3. There's chicken in the fridge. Cook it, however. Jason doesn't like when the trash isn't taken out before he gets home. Once, Claire left for the weekend and said, casually over her shoulder, "There's a list on the counter. Don't forget to scrub the bathroom and water the lawn." We, as in me and a 2-year-old. The list was handwritten, bullet-pointed, and signed at the bottom with a smiley face. It was almost funny. Almost. The following Monday, Jason told Evan, who had spilled orange juice, "Ask Grandma to clean it. She's not doing anything important anyway." Evan did. He handed me a paper towel like it was a medal. I wiped the floor slowly, and tried to remember if Peter had ever spoken that way to me. He hadn't. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the bed and reread the thank you card they'd given me when I first moved in. It said, "We're so grateful for all you do. This is your home too." Now my bedroom door was rarely knocked on. Claire stopped calling me by name. I was she, or sometimes nothing at all. Leave it for her to handle. She knows how to make that. Became the background. Functioning shadow. Still, I did what was expected. Not out of hope for gratitude but out of habit. I cooked, cleaned, I watched Evan. I let Jason and Claire go about their lives as if I were a quiet machine keeping the wheels turning. But one evening, as I folded laundry in the living room, I noticed something. Claire had opened a laptop to show Jason fabric swatches. "For the guest room," she said. "I want to make it lighter. More modern." "Isn't that Mom's room?" Jason asked. Claire laughed. "Not forever. Just prepping." I pretended not to hear. They didn't look at me. I returned the folded towel to the basket. The next morning, Evan came to me with a drawing. "It's our house," he said proudly. There were 4 stick figures: Evan, Jason, Claire, and a dog. "Where am I?" asked gently. He frowned. "I think you live somewhere else in this one." I smiled, nodded, and told him it was a beautiful drawing. But inside something folded shut. I stopped leaving notes on the fridge. Stopped baking the muffins Claire used to like. Stopped picking up after their forgotten coffee cups in the hallway. I wasn't angry. I was adjusting. In small ways I began pulling myself back. One afternoon I went for a walk and didn't tell them. When I came back, no one had noticed I was gone. Another evening I stayed in my room during dinner. Laughed at a show on the TV. No knock. No question. I was starting to understand my place. And it wasn't as someone loved. It was as someone used. One night, I came downstairs to get a glass of water. I heard Jason and Claire in the kitchen. Claire whispered, "She's not going to be around much longer. I mean, let's be real. She's almost 70. Jason didn't argue. Aside. I stood in the hallway, water glass shaking slightly in my hand. Later that night, I opened Peter's old recipe box. He had once written a note on the inside lid. "Home is where you are respected, not where you are needed." Felt like a whisper across time. So I began to plan. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. The rain had come hard that week in Seattle. It felt as if the sky itself was unraveling. Peter's funeral was small, quiet. He'd wanted it that way. No speeches. Just a closed casket, soft piano music, and a few chairs under a rented tent at the cemetery. I wore the black coat he always liked. The one with the high collar that made me look, in his words, like someone with somewhere important to be. Jason stood beside me, stiff and unreadable. Claire wore dark glasses even though the sky was gray. Evan fidgeted in his little jacket, too young to understand. When the ceremony ended, people dispersed quickly. No one lingered. Stayed. Just a minute longer. Just to say goodbye. Then Claire stepped closer, leaned in, and lowered her voice. "You've grieved," she said. "Time to pack your things and move out. We've already submitted paperwork to transfer the house. It's Jason's now." She pulled back, putting on that same composed smile she used in public. Jason stood right beside her. He heard it all. He said nothing. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in Peter's old study, staring at the safe I had never touched. He always told me not to worry about the paperwork. "That's my job, Vanessa," he'd say. "You keep the heart. I'll keep the house." But now I needed to know. The code was our anniversary. Course it was. Inside, manila folders. Neatly labeled. One with my name. Another. Jason Loans. I opened the first. Inside were documents. 3 separate bank accounts. Investment statements. Trust fund. Everything in my name. The second folder made my hands go cold. Amounts. Missed payments. $96,300 in total. Jason had borrowed from Peter. Repeatedly. And not once had he told me. There was also a letter. Peter's handwriting, unmistakable. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Vanessa, I know you never wanted to worry about money. That's why I set all of this up. Quietly. Carefully. You own more than you think. Don't let them decide what happens next." I sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in my hands. The next morning I went to Rainier Bank. I asked for the manager, Mrs. Brown. She had known Peter for decades. She offered tea. I declined. I showed her the documents. She smiled gently, then nodded. It's all legitimate. And yes, in your name. Peter made sure everything was secured for you. Pause. There's one more thing. The HVAC company, Cascade Heating and Air. It belongs to your trust. Since 2019. You're the sole beneficiary. My mouth opened, closed. Peter hadn't sold the business. He had folded it into the trust. Protected it. Me. I walked out of the bank into the rain. Felt cleaner than before. Cold, but clear. Jason and Claire were home when I returned. Claire was on her laptop, comparing countertop samples. Jason was watching sports, half asleep. There you are, Claire said without looking up. We need to talk about the move. And about Evan's new schedule. I can't keep re-explaining everything to you. I said nothing. Just nodded. That night I didn't cry. Instead, I opened a blank notebook and started listing names. Lawyer. An accountant. Joe Peters' foreman. Mrs. Brown. I drew lines between them. I was done being pushed. The time for grief had passed. The time for quiet action had begun. I spent the following days quietly unraveling their plan. First, I hired a lawyer named Elsie Tran. Calm voice, sharp mind. She asked for copies of everything. I handed over folders. She flipped through Jason's loan records, the trust documents, the Cascade ownership. This is solid, she said. You're in a very strong position. Next, I changed every password. Banking, email, utilities. I rerouted mail to a secure P.O. box. Then I called Joe, Peter's old colleague. He'd run the daily operations at Cascade for years. I trusted him. Peter had too. Joe, I said, I'm stepping in. Quietly. But I need your help. He didn't ask why. He just said, tell me what you need. Within a week, the business had a new structure. Day-to-day operations remained the same, but financial control moved entirely under my authority. Joe managed the staff. I managed the books. Jason and Claire continued on like nothing had changed. They argued about cabinet finishes, debated pool installations. Claire mentioned converting the garage. They thought they were building a future, but they were standing on sand. I met with the estate accountant. We reviewed the remaining assets. Peter had left nothing to chance. There was a clause in the trust. If any beneficiary attempted to take control through coercion or legal pressure, their access would be frozen. Claire's comment at the funeral, we already submitted paperwork to transfer the house. Qualified as such. My lawyer filed the paperwork. Quietly. With precision. Jason and Claire would be notified soon. Meanwhile, I stayed polite. I continued making dinner. I picked up Evan from preschool. I answered when spoken to. Smiled when smiled at. But I no longer volunteered anything. The calls started coming in. From numbers I didn't recognize. Long-lost relatives. Claire's mother. A former neighbor. All with the same tone. Claire says you're not well. She said you've been confused lately. She's worried about your behavior. I listened. Thanked them. Hung up. Claire was building her story. One whisper at a time. I didn't argue. I gathered evidence. Elsie advised me to stay composed. People believe patterns, she said. Not moments. Keep your pattern clean. Let hers unravel. That week, I removed Jason and Claire as authorized contacts from every financial account. No alerts were sent. No calls were made. Then I contacted the county clerk. Asked to be notified if anyone tried to alter the property deed. Just in case. Because Jason had started asking questions. Hey Mom, he said one night. Do you know when the deed will be finalized? Claire says it might be held up because of Dad's paperwork. Smiled. Oh, I'm working on that. He didn't ask again. A week later, Claire approached me while I was folding towels. I just want to make sure everything is smooth, she said. This transition has been hard on all of us. He nodded. It has. And I know you've been handling a lot. But maybe it's time to consider what's next for you. You know, long term. I folded the last towel. placed it neatly on the stack. "I have," I said. She smiled. "A little too wide. A little too hopeful." "Good," she said. That night, I moved all essential documents into a locked suitcase. I booked a hotel downtown under a different name. Then, in the early hours of the next morning, I left. No note, no goodbye, just silence. I called Elsie from the hotel. "Execute everything," I said. Jason and Claire woke to find my room empty. My phone off. Their access denied. They tried calling, messaging, begging. I didn't answer. By noon, the locks had been changed. By evening, the trust had sent a formal letter. "The property is not yours. The business is not yours. The money is not yours." Kept the TV off that night. Ordered soup. Opened a book. And exhaled. Not because it was over, but because I had finally begun. The silence didn't last long. 3 days after I vanished, Jason left a voicemail. "Mom, what's going on? Claire says we're locked out of everything. Can you please call me back?" I didn't. Then Claire called. Her tone wasn't soft. "You're making a mistake. We were trying to include you. Don't throw this family away." I blocked her number. Next came emails from Jason. "Mom, this is insane. You're hurting Evan. How could you do this to your own son?" Each one went unanswered. Then they changed tactics. Claire posted a long message on Facebook, visible to mutual friends and extended family. "We're heartbroken. Vanessa has been acting erratically since Peter passed. We tried to help her, but she's pushed us away. We're praying she finds peace and gets the support she needs." The comments poured in. Asterisk, "You two are so strong. Sending prayers. Mental health matters." Elsie called me that night. "They're trying to control the narrative," she said. "Don't respond. Just document everything." So I did. Screenshots, voicemails, emails, copies printed and filed. A week later, I received notice from the court. Jason and Claire had filed a petition, emergency motion to challenge my mental competency. They claimed I was no longer capable of managing finances, that I had been misled by legal advisors, and that I was endangering family stability. I was stunned but not surprised. Elsie responded immediately. We submitted documentation, full medical records, psychiatric evaluations, letters from Peter's accountant, financial ledgers. We filed a countersuit. Defamation, financial manipulation, elder coercion. The court hearing was scheduled 2 weeks out. During that time, more messages came. Some kind, others laced with shame. "I don't know what Claire told you, but she's trying her best. You were always so grounded. I hope you still are." The implication was clear. If I defended myself, I must be losing something. But they had underestimated one thing. Peter had taught me patience. And Peter had left me with power. Joe continued to manage Cascade. He sent weekly reports. The business was steady. Profits were up slightly. Employees knew I was the new authority. They respected it. Quietly, steadily, I moved into a short-term rental. A small place with wide windows and ocean blue walls. I started each day with tea and silence. I ended it with pages of notes. Preparation, not obsession. The hearing came. Jason and Claire walked in with polished faces, and an attorney who looked 10 years too confident came with Elsie. Dignified. My hair pulled back. Documents in hand. The judge asked questions. I answered clearly. Elsie presented files. Signatures. Financial transfers. Deed clauses. Witness statements. Then came the moment Jason and Claire didn't expect. The trust documents. Peter's letter. The judge read the final clause aloud. In the event of coercion, manipulation, or attempted takeover by any beneficiary, said party forfeits all access until reviewed by the court. Claire paled. Jason looked down. The judge turned to them. Your motion is denied. The court finds no evidence of incapacity. Furthermore, pending investigation into the countersuit, you are instructed to cease all communication with the respondent. We left the courtroom in silence. Elsie turned to me outside and said, "They won't go quietly. But now they know they've lost the ground they stood on." He nodded. That night I returned to my rental, made lentil soup, read a chapter of a novel, watered the rosemary in the kitchen window, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night. Because the war wasn't over. But the siege had ended. And I was still standing, weeks past. The quiet felt heavier now, but not suffocating. It was a silence filled with movement, the sound of roots adjusting, of systems rebuilding underground. Elsie had begun collecting sworn statements. Former employees of Cascade who remembered Jason's entitled visits. Contractors who recalled Claire demanding perks because of family ties. Meanwhile, Jason and Claire kept trying from the sidelines. They appealed to family, to mutual friends. They even contacted a journalist from a small lifestyle blog, trying to pitch a family betrayal piece. It didn't run. Elsie had been one step ahead. I received a letter from the IRS confirming audit clearance on Peter's estate. Meticulous, clean. Joe emailed updates on Cascade. We secured a new client. I began sitting in on board calls. I said little, listened a lot. Jason stopped emailing. Claire started sending letters. Handwritten, dramatic. "You've made your point. We're all hurting. Evan asks about you." Kept each one. One in particular caught my attention. "We only wanted a fresh start. We thought you understood. Why are you making us pay for it?" The phrase wasn't metaphorical. They had defaulted on a payment. The court-enforced repayment plan for Jason's $96,300 loan had been structured over 5 years. Claire's words suggested they were struggling. But their social media still showed brunches, weekend trips, spa visits. I submitted the letter to Elsie. She filed a breach notice with the court. Jason was summoned. Again. This time he came alone. Hair uncut. Shirt untucked. No Claire. He didn't speak to me. The judge asked questions. He mumbled. Offered excuses. The ruling was swift. Wage garnishment. Additional penalties. Automatic lien on any future property. Jason left red-faced. Outside he turned to me. "Why are you doing this?" I looked at him. "My son. The boy I had once rocked to sleep during storms." "Because you forgot I was a person," I said. He blinked. Then walked away. I didn't watch him go. Instead I walked to the bay. The water was calm. Sky overcast but the air soft. I sat on a bench and let time pass. Later that week, I was invited to a community panel about elder financial abuse. Elsie had recommended me. First I hesitated. Then I said yes. The room was modest. A library event space. Folding chairs. Free coffee. I told my story without names. Just truth. About how love can blur into leverage. How silence can become armor. How freedom sometimes looks like walking away from the people you once built your world around. Afterward, a woman approached me. Mid-60s. Thin scarf. Gentle eyes. "Thank you," she said. I thought I was alone. Smiled. "You're not." I went home that night and baked a pie. Peter's favorite. I left the window open. Let the smell drift out. No one knocked. No one came. And still I felt full. Elsie sent one final message before the weekend. The judge dismissed all further claims. Case closed. File sealed. I stared at the screen. Then I powered off the phone. That night, I slept with the window cracked and no alarms. Because I had nothing left to defend. Only peace to maintain. 6 months later, I was living on the Oregon coast. A small house with cedar shingles and a porch that creaked in the mornings. Peter had bought it under the trust years ago. On the deed, in his looping handwriting, he had written, "For Vanessa, when she's ready for fresh air and no obligations." The first time I stepped inside, it smelled of pine and ocean salt. I didn't bring much. Just books, photos, and a suitcase of clothes. No clutter. No remnants. The days passed gently. I planted herbs. Rosemary, thyme, mint. I learned the names of the birds that visited the feeder. I started painting again, badly but with joy. Cascade ran smoothly. Joe emailed monthly summaries. Revenue was steady. Staff turnover was low. They even started a scholarship for HVAC apprentices, in Peter's name. I signed the paperwork without fanfare. Jason and Claire made their court-ordered payments on time now. Garnished wages, monthly transfers. They tried to fight the lien once more. They lost. It didn't bring me pleasure. It brought me boundaries. One morning, I received a call from a young woman named Carla. She introduced herself as a social worker from Seattle. Ms. Vanessa, we're organizing a support group for women who've experienced financial manipulation from family. Would you be willing to speak? Asked for time. I walked to the shoreline. Watched waves roll in like clockwork. Then I called her back. Yes, I said. But I won't speak about revenge. I'll speak about waking up. And about learning to close doors, even to family, when they stop treating you like one. Thank me. I heard the relief in her voice. The panel was small. A circle of chairs. Low light. No microphones. I shared the story as I remembered it. Not with bitterness. Just detail. The way Claire had said, until she gets old enough to be annoying. The way Jason had looked away. The way silence had become my signal. I ended with this. We are not the roles they assign us. We are not the favors they tally. We are not their free labor, their built-in backups, their debt accounts. We are ourselves. And that is enough. People clap. Quietly. Meaningfully. Later, Carla gave me a thank you card. Inside, she had written, "You reminded me that walking away can be a form of love, too. A love for yourself." I kept that card in the drawer by my bed. Evan sent a drawing a few months later. Jason must have helped him. It showed a house by the water, a woman with silver hair, and a dog, though I didn't have one. He had written to Grandma. I remember the muffins. I didn't reply. But I put it on the fridge. Peter's old watch sat on the shelf, still ticking. One day I might give it to Evan. But not yet. I walk every morning. Watch the gulls. Check the tide. Breathe without flinching. No one demands anything. No one waits with lists. And when the sun sets, I make tea and sit on the porch. There are no voices raised. No guilt trips. No unpaid debts of gratitude. Just me. And that finally is enough.